سبحان فالق الإصباح.
Put you in the camel clutch, crack your spine like the Dutch. Sideline, ringside, paralyzed, fuck a crutch, cause you're gonna need a wheelchair. Then I mean with the overkill, smash your baby face with a steel chair. The square circle, you'll get killed there. Black and blue when you turn her purple, leaking red when it's spilled there. Ain't Bill Fair, catching heat with the crowd. Just another vicious heel down the cheat and he's proud. Hear the screams wasn't allowed. The reading out his palms, fucking book of songs. When the dirty Saudis dropping bombs, ain't police with batons.
All right, Hamin Army, it is time to flex up, guns out. We are about to go to war. It is February 24th, and this is your Monday locker room. As you see, the boss man, Hamin, he's out in Vegas right now, cashing those fat stacks of chips out there. And so I had to go out and recruit myself a big-time ring general. Hey, this is a big one right here, and he has over 2 decades experience in the business of pro wrestling, trained by the cult classic himself, Shark Boy. He is one of the insane masterminds behind the Squared Circle Expo. Hamin Army, let's make some noise. Welcome him to the show, Mr. Ed Gonzales. Ed, how we doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing all right, brother. How about you?
Doing great, my friend. I've been looking forward to sit down on a platform like this with you. Like I can cut that intro music there. But brother, hey, like I said, I've been looking forward to sitting down with you on a platform, a podcast platform. I've got to work with you in the past, learned so much from you. I want to be able to pass that on to our listeners here. And as I told you before we went to air, this is the locker room, man. We just got to shoot the shit. And I know you are a straight shooting SOB.
That's been the rumor for many years.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, doing my research, setting up for this thing, man. I couldn't believe this. Cause you still out there and run with those young dogs, man. You keep up with that young packs in the business, but you're over 2 decades into professional wrestling right now.
Yeah, man. And my body feels every single one of them.
So, yeah, how many bump cards do you think you've gone through?
Oh, too many. Enough that I had to hang them all up, threw them all away.
Oh man, we're gonna get to some of those good old classic stories, but I remember the first time that I got to see it in the ring. Immediately, man, you talk about a great storyteller in the ring, the immediate charisma that draws an audience towards you. But you were working for Shark Boy, who you trained under there at the Shark Tank. I believe you were maybe one of the first classes that he had.
Yeah.
But you guys were running Buckeye Pro Wrestling with Shark Boy's promotion, where you guys kind of cut your teeth, learning your way through the ropes, if you will, no pun it there, professional wrestling. But the perfect town for pro wrestling, Blue Ball, Ohio, was the show that I saw you on out there.
Yeah, I forgot about that town. It's essentially Middletown, Ohio, but for some reason, that stretch of road or whatever was called Blue Ball for some reason.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably you could throw a rock from one side to the other, but when you're driving through the town, it's theirs because they embrace it. They lean into it, just like a good gimmick in wrestling, a good storyline. You lean into it. Like there's the Blue Ball car wash, the Blue Ball police was my favorite. And these are literally signs in this town. But going to watch Mr. Ed Gonzales inside the wrestling ring in Blue Ball, Ohio. One of the things I'll always remember is a fan.
God, how long ago was that?
Man, if you were in that first class, you're probably maybe 1 or 2 years into the business at that point.
Okay. Yeah, sounds probably about right.
2003, 2004, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, that sounds about right.
So you go way back, and other big names the big names you've worked in the ring with, but big promotions. You've traveled across the country, but I remember seeing a lot of you in the HWA back in the Heartland Wrestling Association.
Oh yeah, that was home. That was home for many years. Absolutely.
Now we got the chat is filling up, guys, over there. If you got any questions for Ed, he's been in this business for a long time, seen it all. Well, let's go out there. Let's talk about breaking into the business. Ed, what was kind of that drive for you? What said, you know what, I'm a crazy son of a bitch. I'm gonna go do this.
Well, I was a young stupid kid, and I remember I grew up in the state of Iowa,
I'm sure
and
you're not Southern Ohio, basically.
well, not yet. So I grew up in Iowa, but when I was probably about 16, maybe 17, somewhere in that range, I still lived at home. I was still a teenager in high school, and my mother got transferred to Dayton, Ohio for a job. So, of course, I had to go. And I remember watching MTV, because you watched MTV back then,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And they had True Life, I'm a Pro Wrestler. And, I've always been a pro wrestling fan my whole life, like diehard pro wrestling fan. And featured on that show was Les Thatcher's main event pro wrestling can.
I remember I remember it just like I was watching it this afternoon.
And that was in Cincinnati, and I knew, well, hell, Cincinnati and Dayton, they're right next to each other. And so it took some time playing around on the archaic internet that we had back in the day. And, one connection led to another, and found a school, found a guy, and I said, hey, I want to learn how to fall down.
That's great. Hey, speaking of that MTV special, I want to be a pro wrestler, kind of where the world got their first little glimpse of Shark Boy himself. He had a couple of cameos in there. Hey, I remember back then watching that. They ended up, I can't remember the kid out of New York that they started following. He just couldn't cut it. So they had the pivot there. You got that swerve thrown at you. They go to Rory Fox. And I would have bet anything that dude would have been headlining WrestleManias, But not to say he hasn't had a tremendous career, but then, man, I thought he was destined, for the absolute grandest stage.
No, Rory's awesome. I still talk to Rory from time to time. Nothing like regular, but every now and again we'll talk, and we've talked about bringing him on to Squared Circle Expo, and we were even going to do it last year, but then he got hurt. He's a hell of a talent. Still to this day.
I still remember just the look on his face when Les gave him his gimmick, rapid fire, Rory Fox. In the chat, his gimmick was a paper boy. You imagine, just like from the NES game Paperboy, that was the gimmick. But man, he embraced it like crazy. He ran with it. Ed, who are some of the other? Hey, we'll name drop around here. Who's who in professional wrestling, but early on in the career, who are some of those big names that you were rubbing elbows with?
Oh man, I mean, it's really weird because back in the early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s. Wrestling wasn't like it is today. Today stars can actually be made on the indies. That really was not the case back then at all. And so early in my career, I got to work with, guys like Coco Beware and Greg Valentine and Jimmy Snuka and King Kong Bundy and, a lot of those guys, like super early, because again, like, I worked with a lot of
leaving the spotlight and coming back to the indies.
Right? Yeah, because the indies back then were a place where you started or you finished, right? The indies again back then. Don't get me wrong, there was some great talent that came out of there and ended up getting jobs and stuff like that. But like at that juncture in the industry, indie wrestling was where you started or where you finished. There was no real, oh man, have you seen this guy? He's making the rounds across the country and he's getting ready to be signed. You didn't have any of that, because the internet was still an infant at that time. It existed, but not like it does today. You couldn't upload your matches online and send a link, you know what I mean? So like, I got to work with a lot of old school guys, but I got to work with a lot of young guys that were starting out as well. Guys that went on way further than I ever did. Shit, don't get me wrong. You say, you spent 20 years, but it's not like I ever, became a part of this upper echelon of the industry. Not as a wrestler, anyway.
I was going to say, I think you have. We're going to talk about that. You think you bring up a fantastic point. Something I've never really considered or heard people talk about is how that indie scene has evolved over the years. When you broke in, it was where you started and where you ended. Now you've got that sweet middle spot, that makes up that sandwich where people are just inventing their careers or reinventing themselves out there.
Yeah, I mean, you can, for the people that hustle hard and take it seriously and not just focus on the wrestling, but focus on things like the merch, the self-promotion, the stuff. You can make a career without ever getting, into WWE or AEW or whatever the big promotions are. You can legitimately have a career on the indies now. That wasn't the case back then.
Yeah, you do see that now, where a lot of indie wrestlers they're able to buy houses now, and it is their full-time job. But as you said, it takes that big time commitment, and where you're not just kind of playing wrestler, you truly are a professional wrestler.
Well, yeah, because you got to think, man. I mean, back then, again, I've said this a couple times, but again, like the internet isn't what the internet is now. We had dial-up internet back then, right? Like I said, you couldn't upload your matches. You couldn't have a merch page. You couldn't get on Whatnot or TikTok or whatever and sell your merch. So, back then we were just weekend warriors that were happy to drive 200 miles for $40 or whatever it was back then, But no, the indies is where you can absolutely make a career now.
What was your AOL handle? Do you remember?
I don't. I had one. I know I did because that's where we started, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, but no, I couldn't even tell. It had something to do with either WWF or WCW or something, I'm sure.
All right, you talked about getting in the car, driving 200 miles for that $40, just glad to be there, part of the business, cutting your teeth, learning the ropes. Who was your big time travel crew, or some of the guys that you really liked hitting the road with?
Oh man, I mean, Shark Boy was always number one. Like we traveled.
Shark's a hell of a guy and a hell of a personality, man.
We traveled a lot, but also one guy he's actually catching his stride now. But Jack Vaughn in his early years, I booked Jack Vaughn in his first wrestling show ever when I shouldn't have been booking anybody. And, he's starting to come into his own. He was another road buddy of mine because we all came from the same area. It was like me, Shark Boy, Jack Vaughn. It's still weird to me to call him Jack Vaughn, but Jack Vaughn, a guy by the name of Jay West. Young guy who's no longer with us, called Adam Bueller. We were that team. We were that carload.
Some great names you dropped there. Said Mr. Vaughn. He's been on the Hamin Media Group platform with us, reinventing himself. Back in the day when he came in, either just by Dustin or over in the NWF, he got great success as Muldoon. One of my favorite.
He's still in my phone to this day as Muldoon.
Muldoon. Hey, him and Stamp Lickage. Out here where I'm at in Harrison, Ohio, in a street fight, one of my favorite matches of all time, man. It was just a blast to be there, front row. You mentioned Jay West. Anybody out there, if you see his name anywhere, listen to the knowledge that dude's dropping. I've been sitting in an Ascend Pro Wrestling at a training there, and you get lost just listening to Jay as a coach there, working with those kids, man. He is so damn good and smooth, and just knows professional wrestling so well.
Oh, for sure.
Any stories maybe with Shark? Because I know Shark likes to party that you could share with us, man.
Listen, man, there's still some statute of limitations that exist that I don't know if I get too deep into. But just know that good times were had.
That is awesome. Another interesting a little fact about Mr. Gonzales here that some of the wrestlers they swear against it. Some have made it work. I guess with that old saying, don't shit where you eat, but you married into the business and somehow made this work all these years later.
I did marry into the business. My wonderful, understanding wife, wherever she's at, if she can hear me. We have been married this past October was 17 years of marriage. Hey man, we were two young kids that had spent some time in the business. We both sowed our royal oats for enough time that we decided it was time to settle down and get married. And 17 years later, here we are.
Very, very cool. For those that or wondering who we're talking about, an indie icon in her own right there, hardcore Heather Owens.
He called you an icon.
Hey, I was there when she won the World War III Battle Royal.
Well, I won it the next year, so you know.
Hey, all right, keep it in the family. Hey, you mentioned earlier, and about being in that hierarchy, and I think you have ascended to that level, and you did it without taking bumps, without taking the bumps, and it's when you guys you get your crew together. This undertaking just completely blows me away. I've done the small weekend indie promotion shows myself. I know how hectic they are. You guys just said the hell with that. We are diving into the deep end. We're just going to throw a damn party each and every year, one time a year, bring everybody from around the world of professional wrestling. And you guys launched the Squared Circle Expo. It take me back to the beginnings, the blueprint of how you guys came up with this thing.
I was done being physically in the wrestling business. I didn't take care of my body. I liked the drive-through more than I liked the gym. You know what I mean? So I'll never pretend that I was some big jacked guy that, no, dude. I was a chubby roly-poly dude that bumped around for 20 some odd years and just decided, it's time to hang him up. In that interim, I had somehow fell face first into celebrity booking and celebrity conventions, horror conventions and stuff like that.
You had other convention experience before getting into
the
genre.
Correct. We won't mention them, but yes, I had some experience prior, and unfortunately that partnership kind of dissolved. It wasn't going in the right direction. So we all, not all of us, but most of us decided to, just, what, man, this is just not worth it anymore. Let's just take some time off and relax. Let's get out of the convention business. And I was still working indie shows at this time. So you're talking 2011 when we got involved with the convention stuff. 2011, 2012, somewhere in that range. And we were doing.
So the horror, were you a part of like that management team that's setting up those, or were you agenting?
No, I was not agenting. Okay. That's a terrible job to do. No, I was definitely booking my friends on the horror shows and making new friends, making business contacts, and taking care of stuff in the vendor rooms and stuff like that. So, seen it all play out, seen how it worked. But again, I was still working indie shows during all of this. And slowly but surely, my in-ring wrestling career was winding down. I'd gotten down to like maybe 2 or 3 shows a month, which then turned into, maybe 1 or 2 shows a month, which then turned into nothing. And then COVID hit, right? So, that was easy to end it then. But we had decided in 2018, so it was the end of 2018, to take a step back from the horror convention and just chill. Really, that's what it was. We were just like, we're done. Let's just, put that chapter behind us and relax. And creative minds, as they do, you sit around and you start bullshitting. Man, we should do another convention. Nah, we're not going to do another convention. I think we should do a convention, man. No, it sounds like so much work and I don't want to do it. Plus, there's so many horror conventions that are out there now. It's watered down. And then somebody said, you know a lot of pro wrestlers, don't you? Are there any pro wrestling conventions? And I said, well, there's WrestleCon that runs, they follow WrestleMania or they follow WWE. They don't really have like a home base. I said, there's WrestleCade, but they're pretty much only in North Carolina. There's a couple things in Florida, 1 or 2 in like the California area. And I was like, there's really not any in the Midwest. There's nothing in the Midwest. There's tons of indie shows, but nothing bringing stars.
And really a hotbed for professional wrestling in
Yeah, it really is.
where we're at.
And you joke around with your buddies like, oh, we could do this, we could do that, and then suddenly it came from joking around to we could do this to we could do that to holy shit, can we actually do that? And turned out we could. We decided, this was probably late 2019, that we were going to run a show, and we're going to run a show May of 2020. That was the plan. We started, kind of low key advertising. We started reaching out to talent, getting talent booked. And then March of 2020 rolls around. I mean, we sold tickets. We spent $10,000 on advertising a May 2020 show.
Let me ask you, over the years here, you guys are heading into the fifth year. We'll get to those details, but this has got to be crazy. What's the budget going in for these things?
I'm not going to, I can't share numbers. One, because it's not, I don't think it's classy to talk about numbers like that. But two, it changes. It changes every year. But I will tell you that, low, mid six figures.
That's fair. And I see where you're coming from. I just want people to know the commitment before, getting into something like that.
Oh, for sure. And 2020 rolled around. We'd been advertising. We had bought all this advertising. We'd spent all this money getting talent. And then COVID hit in March. And we're sitting there and we're like, oh no, man, like 2 weeks to slow the curve, right? That's what they said, right? Oh man, we're in March, we'll be fine come May. We were not fine come May. And so we had to cancel. And that was kind of a blow to our egos, This is our first show and we're already having to cancel. It's not our fault.
Right.
Obviously.
It's still one of those just heartbreaking defeats. It's out of your control. I mean, it's almost more devastating because it isn't anything that you did wrong.
Exactly. Like, we didn't mess something up. So, but we canceled. And luckily, the venue, everybody understood. The talent understood. The venue understood. Everybody got it. So we planned a new date for 2021. And quite frankly, it happened. We were able to get it off the ground. We didn't lose any money. We had to go with a lot of restrictions because 2021, we were still worried about COVID, right? As a nation, as a planet. And so there were masks and things of that nature that everybody had to do.
And you got to have all that protocol. You got to have the sanitary stations.
I remember the day of the hotel started getting cold feet. Like, I don't know. Like, we're literally in the building. Like, in 16 hours, this thing's a go. We've sold thousands of tickets.
Thousands of tickets. People already got rooms. The talents have arrived.
Exactly. Like, they started to get a little cold feet. And we had to, that day, search out these, industrial room sanitizers. I don't even know what they were, but it cost us almost 10 grand that day on top of everything else, just to convince everybody that this is a go. And we had to get one for each room section, and it was insane. But you know what? I think it made us a little stronger because everything after that was, we made it through COVID, right? We made it through a COVID show. Anything else is going to be, child's play. We can get through this. So I think that made it stronger, but no, that first year, that was a struggle, but we got through it, man. And we've had a fantastic time ever since.
That is awesome. I know, a lot of people out there listening, they love hearing about the stories, the interactions with the talents themselves. How does that process kind of unfold? Now, obviously, you with the years of experience inside of this, you've made so many contacts, but as you said, I mean, you guys are booking dozens of top talents from across the country, around the globe, coming in. Can you just break down that process a little bit from, how you begin contact to negotiations and
Honestly, there's 3 or 4 different routes that it all goes, because it's not all of my talent. I don't book all the talent. We sell vendor tables to individual people, and then those individual people bring in talent themselves. Now we bring in ours. We usually bring in about 24, maybe a little more, of our talent, and then the rest is vendor talent.
What's the percentage you say with the agents, the vendors handling that as opposed to in-house?
I would probably say 60-40, 60% vendors, 40% our talent.
That's nice.
But we're also the ones holding the bag, though, because you got to think, not only are we booking 40% of the talent, but we're also booking the hotel. We're also booking a lot of the flights. We're also booking, we're creating a staff. We have all the overhead. The vendors who I love, we couldn't function without them. They're fantastic. But yeah, we couldn't do it all on our own. We need those vendors, and those vendors have been there for us, and they're great. But if it's talent that I have a personal connection with, it's really just a matter of a call or a text. Hey, man, I got this thing coming on for 2 days. You want to join in? Cool. How much you want? And you figure that out. When it's somebody kind of higher on that echelon, maybe they might have an agent you have to go through. That's, you talk to the agent, and you negotiate with the agent. And I like to think I have a little bit more repertoire than some of the other guys. And that's only because of a few things. One, I've spent so long in the business. Right. I'd like to think that enough people have heard or know my name that, they know I'm not some, we have a slogan at Squared Circle Expo. That's 0% carny, right? We're not pulling carny shenanigans, but also I don't collect autographs. I literally, in my house, we have been a part of the convention business for 13, 14 years. I think I collectively in my whole home, I might have 4 or 5 things autographed. That's it, right? A lot of these people, they'll book these guys for autograph signings, but then they'll overload them with 200 of their own items. I don't do that because I don't collect them. So that kind of makes things easier. But, it's 2 dudes, or, 1 dude, me, and a chick, just trying to negotiate and figure out the best deal. But I explain my show just like to you guys as I do to the agents. I'm not selling autographs and photos. That's not my business. I don't sell autographs and photos. I sell memories and experiences. That's what I sell.
I like that.
And so you're not going to get some carny promoter trying to get you to sign 500 extra autographs so that I can pay my rent. My rent's paid. My mortgage is paid. I don't need that extra money. I have a career. This is good time, Ed. I want to do Squared Circle Expo for myself to have a good time, for the fans to have a good time. So I think I have a different mindset than a lot of other people do. Not that having the mindset of conventions are paying my bills is a bad thing. I don't believe that. I think for whatever reason you're doing it, as long as it's a good, valid reason, thumbs up. It's just not why I do it.
And I think it was a post that you'd put out the other day. This is a party. This is a celebration of bringing everyone together.
Absolutely.
That's all things pro wrestling. Any new relationships that you've been able to develop, some good friends that you've made out of this in the business?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I got people that I would have never expected to, give me the time of day, and now they're some of my best friends, all through Squared Circle Expo. And it has nothing to do with me booking them or paying them money. It's just, a couple people got together, found out we liked each other's company. Let's hang out and have a good time.
Yeah, because I remember when you and I a few years ago helped out with then Impact Wrestling, TNA, now rebranded. I know I reached out to them. They came to you, and it was through the encouragement of people you worked with through the expo.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I was trying to get an actual job there. I spoke to the office a lot leading up to that and after. We just couldn't come to an agreement. But it was a good time. It was a good time working with Impact and all those guys, or TNA, or any of that. And I've worked with them since, and I hope to work with them again in the future.
I could say you obviously you bring in a lot of the TNA talents. I guess while we are talking about TNA, we'll blend in some of the hot topics of the day. What's your take on their partnership with WWE right now?
Here's I know online it's a lot of tribalism between AEW and WWE.
Okay, see, I've one of those. To me, tribalism, we're the only genre where tribalism is, to me, frowned upon. Everywhere else, they embrace it. College sports.
It is, but I think there's a reason for it. And I think there's a reason why people like me, or maybe even like you, look at it differently. Like I'm a diehard Chicago Bears fan. Right, like I have been in that abusive relationship for more than 40 years.
We feel your pain,
Right. So I've been in that, but I'm tribal about it. I don't care how good Green Bay is doing. Green Bay sucks. I don't care if they're in the Super Bowl and they win it. Green Bay sucks because that's the tribalism that is okay. But also, I have never played professional football in my life. You have probably never played professional football in your life. So I think the fact that with pro wrestling, the reason it's not okay for tribalism, in my opinion, I could be totally wrong. The opinions expressed here are of mine and mine alone, not a part of the Hamin Media Group. Pro wrestling is not professional football. Pro wrestling, I don't care if you work for the WWE. I don't care if you work for AEW. I don't care if you work for TNA, NWA, MLW, or the plethora of indies. If you got a job and it's putting food on your table and you're doing fantastic work, that's all that counts, right? Like, as a professional wrestler, the most important thing is to be able to be a professional wrestler, in my opinion, right? And when an AEW guy is hanging out with a WWE guy because maybe they grew up on the indies together, maybe they've been best friends since high school, maybe, whatever, the internet acts like somebody's some kind of traitor.
Yeah,
it's
you're going to get
so
fired.
Weird.
It's like crossing enemy lines, like a real war.
It's so weird to me because we're all in the same industry, right? We're all just trying to eat. We're all just trying to get a job. We're all just trying to pay our bills. And I don't care if you work for any of those companies. If you're my people, you're my people. And if you're good, you're good. It shouldn't matter. But you have people that grew up with WWE and they believe that WWE is the only product. I kind of compare it to Apple and iPhone people. Okay.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
All right. So me, I'm an Android person.
I'm a droid. And I'll be damned if I'm switching over.
And I'll never switch over. But here's the thing. Not only did I spend almost 20 years in the wrestling industry, but I spent almost 20 years in the mobile industry as well. And Apple is so good at marketing. Apple has the best marketing of almost any company on the planet. And there are people on this planet, I promise you, I've seen them, that don't believe a smartphone is a smartphone. They believe every smartphone is an iPhone, right? So it's kind of like if you get a cut right here on your arm, right? Mm-hmm. And you need to put something on it, stop the bleeding, what do you use?
A Band-Aid.
See, but it's not.
That's a brand, not an actual.
Band-Aid is a brand. That's an adhesive bandage. But that's what Apple is to the smartphone game. Okay?
And what WWE is to professional wrestling.
That's what WWE is to professional wrestling. Now, once you get one of those diehard Apple users and you tell them about this Android that has a better camera, a better battery life, faster processor, a higher resolution screen, they don't care. Because it's not an iPhone, right? It's not an iPhone. Pro wrestling's the same way. you can say, AEW or because straight up, honest to goodness, TNA has the best wrestling product on television right now. That's not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. TNA as a whole has the best wrestling product on television. The problem is they don't have the TV outlets that the other people do.
The distribution.
And that goes back to the Apple and iPhone, right? So I have a Galaxy S25 Ultra. In my opinion, that is the best phone on the market. Samsung doesn't have the marketing that Apple does. So no diehard Apple user is going to believe me when I tell them that my Android phone is better than their iPhone. They're just not going to do it. And that's what pro wrestling is, right? Like, I honestly believe that TNA has the best product right now overall. That does not mean that AEW, WWE, NWA, or MLW, or whoever isn't producing good product. They're all producing good product. I just think overall, TNA has the best product right now. But the tribalism is so weird that, like, I could literally go online right now and be like, yo, I saw this match on TNA, or I saw this match on AEW, and people are like, you're stupid, you're terrible. And it's just like, what? I don't understand. It's all pro wrestling. But a lot of people think pro wrestling is WWE. That's it. They don't say a pro wrestling move anymore. Oh, he's doing that pro wrestling move. It's the WWE move. It's because their marketing and their reach so dramatic that that's what people assume it is.
It is. You're right on it. I always tell people they're the only company inside of this business that can use an acronym. Everyone else, you have to say, even with AEW, people are like, what the hell is that? Say All Elite Wrestling.
That's
say
true.
Total Nonstop Action. Say Ring of Honor. The only ones that can get away with it is WWE. Because
they're the Band-Aid, the Q-tip, the jacuzzi.
Kleenex, whatever.
Yeah, Kleenex. Yeah, absolutely. I love it all, man. I'll watch any and all pro wrestling.
I know you watch a lot of it. Just your social media, always the big events you're getting into. You're putting over that TNA. You got a lot of the TNA talents that work with you. Probably has nothing to do with it that you put your title on your champ before they put it on your champ.
All I'm saying is Nick Nemeth was the Squared Circle Expo champion before he was the TNA World Champion. So, I mean, yeah.
I always tell people I was the first one to put my top title on Carson Drake before anybody. Even before at Ascend, before at the NWA. Speaking of the NWA, big news for this year's Squared Circle. You guys have come to a nice agreement to get their champions showcased at the event.
Absolutely. We got a deal with Billy and the National Wrestling Alliance and the National Wrestling Alliance. I mean, come on, that's like.
That's you can't get any more historic than that.
You can't get any more historic than the NWA, man. And we're lucky enough to have made a deal with William Patrick Corgan and bring in the.
Did you deal with Billy, Mr. Corgan?
Directly? No, okay. I did not. To get their world champion, their women's world champion, their United States tag team champion, their television champion, their Mid-America champion, their junior heavyweight champion. We have so many of the NWA's champions that I personally believe need to be as showcased as, your WWE, your AEW guys. The NWA, again, I personally believe TNA is putting out the best product right now. Do not sleep on the NWA. They have some amazing talent right now. And again, it comes down to that TV deal, right? They don't have the TV outlet that others have. There is some talent in the NWA right now that should be in everybody's conversation as some of the best current talent happening today.
100%, especially if you're one of those true old school studio style territory wrestling. It gives you that vibe with that top notch talent, names you're going to recognize, and a lot of upcoming. Quick shout out is you're talking about the champions that you guys are going to showcase at this year's Squared Circle Expo. We mentioned Carson, their men's television champion, about two-time champ that's right here in our neck of the woods, Big Mama, the women's
Big Mama, the women's television champions. And tag team. That's right. Her and Kinsey Page, who are both be there, just won their women's tag titles.
The two-woman power, no pun intended, trip there. I believe they made history for the NWA as each being the first dual champions for the women.
That is completely possible, yeah. But
they're going to be
Tom
there.
Latimer. Oh my God.
Yep. The
talent, just the physical specimen that is Tom Latimer. Like, such an amazing talent. I'm excited to have them all on board. I'm super excited.
Very, very cool. Some other big names there with some shout outs. Ben, that's usually here with me, who was the best man at his wedding, who was making big waves in NWA right now. It's Mikey Mondo, who's just reinvented himself. Our very own HMG brother Chris Silvio's there. So a lot going on in the NWA. If you're not checking,
I agree. And I believe that if you are a pro wrestling fan, again, if you're just a WWE fan, that's perfectly okay. But if your eyes are open and you're willing to embrace other pro wrestling and other talent, do not sleep on the NWA. Don't sleep on them. I'm telling you.
Well, we've got TNA stars, you've got AEW stars, you got NWA stars. Let's jump into this year's Squared Circle Expo number 5. I got some of the graphics. I'm just going to kind of flash at it as you're kind of talking about this. The event itself, your main poster there. I mean, it's a who's who that you got lined up for this thing. April 25th, 26th. I guess first and foremost, are there tickets still available for this thing?
Tickets are still available. Now, your high-end tickets, your VIPs, your main event passes, those are sold out. Those have been sold out since October of last year. But there are still Friday tickets. There are still Saturday tickets. Come meet any and all of your stars. Hell, we're just talking about TNA. We just announced the other day, say his name and he appears. We got Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry coming Friday only.
That's going to be a big one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also see, I guess probably your headliner. You got him. It just looks like for Saturday. I know you guys are expecting a big turnout for the only one on many's Mount Rushmore, Mr. Bret Hart.
Absolutely, Bret, the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be in the house. It's going to be Saturday only, so plan your weekend accordingly. Come Friday, come see Joe Hendry, a plethora of other talent. Then come up Saturday and say hey to Bret.
I'll go through a couple of these. I do want to throw out there, apologize to some of our friends, Ed's and mine, mutual friends. If I did the slide for everybody, we'd be here for hours. That's how much talent is at the show.
I have that same argument every year when it comes to the main poster. Why am I not on there? Why is my guy not on there? I can only fit so many people. I'm sorry.
It is. I mean, I'll throw up a couple of these, and they're unbelievable that they're going to be under one roof here that you can meet, get photo ops with, get autographs. Kurt Angle, the Olympic champion. I think it's going to be a big draw, a big reason that I personally am, and I feel a lot of people are watching AEW right now is the Hurt Syndicate. You got Bobby Lashley going to be in the house, Shelton Benjamin, MVP. You go with some other, the hardcore legend himself, Mick Foley's going to be there. Always a good time. One of the hottest names in the business. How about we got Swerve, Jerry Lawler, JBL. I know a guy that is a friend of yours now that you've been working with, Matt Cardona, a former champion of yours at the
former Squared Circle Expo champion, Matt Cardona.
Some of the ladies going to be representing Hall of Famer Tori Wilson, one of my all-time favorites. I'm going to call, she is the OG, the queen of the wardrobe malfunction. Miss Jacqueline's is gonna be there, and this one I really like, man. I thought this was a very cool addition that you had, stepping outside the realm of actual professional wrestling, but bring in Mike O'Malley from the hit show Heels. I think that's
absolutely. Now, don't forget for all you '90s kids, the host of Guts.
What?
Mike O'Malley was the host of Nickelodeon Guts.
What? Really? I didn't. Okay, I'm learning something. I didn't put that together, man. You talk about. Hey, that's even better. Yep. That's even better, man. That is cool. Let me ask you, because I know a lot of people inside of professional wrestling, those that have been there, that have taken those bumps, that have traveled the road, that have lived in the business. They're kind of, it's either they love it or they hate it. What are your thoughts on Heels?
I love Heels. People asked me, this was before it made Netflix, right? It was still on Stars. because it's a Starz original show. Hopefully, since Starz did cancel them, Netflix does like what they did with Cobra Kai, which was originally a YouTube Red program that got canceled, got picked up by Netflix. They made more seasons. I'm kind of hoping for that for Netflix. But people ask me what I thought of the show Heels. And I really enjoyed Heels, not just for the wrestling part, but the drama part.
Thank you.
But the thing is like, well, people were like, well, how does it compare to actual like real indie wrestling? And I go, listen, it is produced, developed for television. So the producers that created this show is what a Hollywood producer thinks indie pro wrestling is, if that makes sense, right? I loved it, though. I thought it was a great show. I hope they pick it up, because they left us off on a hell of a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So I hope Netflix picks up season 3, and then so just like they did with Cobra Kai. But I loved it. Is it a good representation of what independent wrestling is? No, of course not. They have pyro, for Christ's sakes, like at an indie show. No, it's not a real representation of indie pro wrestling, but it's still fantastic.
Well, we're talking about all these great talents, and in addition to the meet and greets and the hanging out, you guys have a plethora of other activities. Even in the graphic, one of my favorite pictures is you and Dara, Victoria, Lisa doing some karaoke. So you get the hangouts with the talents, and you guys put on your own shows, as we were mentioning, Your Champion and all that. And this is awesome. You guys are doing a Rumble this year. How sweet is that poster out there, everybody, man?
Let me tell you something, man. Growing up in the early 90s, as I did, because I'm an old man, one of the coolest, most iconic pro wrestling posters in the world was the 1991 and 92 Royal Rumble. And if you look at that poster, go ahead and throw that poster back up there if you can.
We got it.
If you look at this poster and compare it to that 91 poster of the Royal Rumble, it not only is it identical, of course, with our talent and our details, this was hand drawn. I commissioned a friend of mine to hand draw this poster. This was not, graphic design. This was not, obviously the logos and stuff I added later, but the actual wrestlers that you're seeing walking down that rainy street, he spent over 80 hours hand drawing this poster from start to finish. And I could not be more excited or happy for the work that he did. It is so amazing.
Holy shit, that is awesome, man. I was blown away by it, but now to get the background behind it. And I want to put over your design team with all the artwork over the years, man. It just simply it pops out, man. It lets you know it's something special's happening.
I got great people on my side. Dick Starr, Louisville native, is the gentleman who hand drew that poster. We've got Erica. Erica is Creative is her handle on Instagram, who does all of our graphics. And then we've got Hamin Huerta, who is a fantastic digital designer as well. Those 3 people, I have not an artistic bone in my body. I couldn't draw a circle or a straight line. And I'm able to take these jumbled up thoughts in my brain, and those 3 individuals can put it down and make it work.
That is amazing. On the Squared Circle Expo right now, you said you still got some of those tickets available. For all that information, where? SquaredCircleX.com. SquaredCircleX.com. Hey, or look up Ed on Facebook. You can also find Squared Circle Expo on Facebook, where they share a lot of great stuff. And you follow Ed on there, you get some insight into professional wrestling. And I do want to switch some gears, Ed. I want to kind of pick your brain on some of the hot topics inside the world of professional wrestling. And I guess to kind of give those who are listening and watching along with us some insight, you kind of did that. Is you're talking about all of the wrestling that you watch. And obviously you have a different perspective all those years inside of the business. Do you like to watch as more of a fan now? Do you really critique things? How do you
you have to
consume the
watch
product nowadays?
So here's the thing, and this is the problem I have with a lot of indie talent. And I'm not talking shit. You
Yeah,
have
go ahead,
to watch
man. Hey,
it.
we talk tons of shit around here. Go ahead.
I have turned over a new leaf in my life. I do not talk shit anymore. But I watch pro wrestling as a fan. Now, granted, my education in the business allows me a different perspective.
Yeah, it's got to be impossible to just turn that off.
Exactly. But there's a reason these guys and girls are on our screens and we're sitting on the couch, right? And who am I to watch an event, whether I paid for it, whether it's on cable, whether it's on national television? Who am I as the indie guy that, wrestled in front of 150 to 200 people every weekend for 20 years? I am not in a place to critique them and tell them what they did wrong and to complain about it on the internet. Why? Because they're where I wanted to be. So I try to watch it as much as a fan as I can. And that's the other thing too. People are always like, let's get together and, let's get a big group together and let's watch, the pay-per-view or whatever. I can't. I have to watch it by myself. And I have to watch it by myself because I get so irritated with guys that have never been there tell the people that are there what they're doing wrong. Because if you were right, you'd be there and they'd be on this couch, but you're on this couch. Like that's the mindset I've always had when it comes to pro wrestling is I can't talk shit about these people. These people are doing what all of us want or wanted to do. I watch WWE, AEW, TNA, MLW, the NWA. I'll watch it all. But I'm not there to critique. I'm there to enjoy professional wrestling.
So when you're all right, so this, you're saying, in real life, in real time, you got to kind of separate yourself from that style fan.
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of handle yourself? I'm sure, man. And I know your DMs are getting blown up. Fans with suggestions, they know how everything should work. How do you handle that side of interacting with individuals, if it be just about critiquing the product, handling your business with Squared Circle Expo, when it comes to dealing with your average fan?
So
I know you got flooded when all those WWE releases happened.
I did.
People are like, you got to book, blah, blah, blah. You got to get all over this. And you put it out there. You said, hey, I'm not doing this because these people they're out of work right now. They have earned space to breathe and figure stuff out.
Exactly. And that's a perfect example. My inbox did blow up, but the thing was not really just by fans, but like by people in the business. And it's like, hey, book this guy, book this girl, book it. And I go, this person literally got fired from their dream job 12 hours ago. And you want me to reach out to them and be like, hey, I heard you just got fired. Can you do something to benefit me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, to me, it gets under my skin because I don't care where you're at in pro wrestling. We're all human beings, right? Like, we're all human beings. And have you ever been fired from a job? I have.
Yeah.
And being fired, you know what? Sucks, right? Unless you quit, then that's different. But if you're fired from a job that you love, I need time to breathe. I need time to digest. I need time to think of my next plan, not, have some random nobody say, you want to come work on my indie show? No, let these people breathe. But, when it comes to wrestling fans, love wrestling fans. I am a wrestling fan. I tell people all the time, Squared Circle Expo, as cliche as it sounds, is for the fans, by the fans. Like, I am a fan of professional wrestling. My partner is a fan of professional wrestling. My wife is a fan of professional wrestling. Regardless of the fact that we've been in the business, we still love it. We still love professional wrestling. And I try to bite my tongue when I am watching wrestling or working with somebody that's not in the business, that's bringing up the business, because they don't know the business like I know the business. So I have to almost, I'm not going to say create two personalities, but I do sometimes have to be two different people, you know?
Absolutely. And it's hard to separate those, as you said. When we're looking at the overall business, we talked about how big, how dominant the WWE is. I kind of want to deep dive into that. There's no denying right now. They are more powerful than they've ever been, especially with the driving force of TKO behind them, recording record financials, global expansion. More specifically, how do you feel about the programs that they have set up, like the NIL going right to the college? With the next in line, they dubbed it with the name, image, likeness, and also the newly developed and announced ID program. Now they're really sinking their teeth into the indies and where those next levels of talents might be coming from.
The name and image likeness, I've
seen they just signed Scott Steiner's son.
So here's the thing.
Over at Jackson State to a NIL contract.
I love professional wrestling. I've grown up through the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s to present, loving professional wrestling. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of people that did not have the dream of being a professional wrestler, becoming a professional wrestler at that caliber, at that level. I don't know if I like that. I can't dog it because it's not my call. But
even when we look back in the realization that a lot of things, especially we came up in the same era, our childhood heroes, some of the most successful people in this business really had no intentions of getting into the business.
There's a lot that had no intentions, and you're 100% right. But they were people that in that time developed not on the biggest, grandest stage, right? Okay, so, they still paid their dues. They still came up on, it was the territory system, but they still came up on the indies. They still wrestled for a hot dog and a handshake, which by the time that they became who they were, that we grew up idolizing, they had earned respect for the business. They had developed a love for the industry of professional wrestling. Goldberg is a prime example. Goldberg paid no dues. Goldberg got thrusted on one of the biggest stages at that time. Goldberg became a superstar. There's no argument to that. Mm-hmm. Goldberg never developed a love for the professional wrestling industry, and it has shown time and time again that he did not love professional wrestling. Professional wrestling was his job, not his passion. I'm not saying you can't have both. I'm not saying you have to love professional wrestling to be successful in it, because clearly you don't have to be. But I believe that there will be conversations years to come not about those people. I believe that Goldberg is kind of the exception, not the rule. But how many people had WWE signed in recent years with zero professional wrestling knowledge, zero professional wrestling experience? They may have gotten some mid-level, pushes, but they're not an all-timer that you're going to talk about. And I don't just mean world heavyweight champions. Take a look at a guy like the Big Boss Man. The Big Boss Man was never world heavyweight champion, but he'll never not be in our memories. Yeah. Right? I can't talk about the NIL program because, one, it's too new to really understand how that's going to truly. But how many people have they signed on that never made it? Gable Stevenson? Wasn't that going to be the next guy?
That blew up in their face. And I know the other big signing, and I believe they're still in school, or they have to still be in school. The twins that played basketball.
I have no idea. who's the Parker Bordeaux, the next Brock Lesnar? Wasn't that going to be the next Brock Lesnar?
Yeah.
He got signed, fizzled out, and
a cup of coffee in AEW. Didn't even.
He didn't even have a cup. He had a thimble of coffee in AEW. And there's something to be said about the passion about the business. Even if they were just a casual fan, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? And they get signed. I think there's something that guys that pay their dues, guys and girls that pay their dues on the indies, they have a little bit more. I mean, look at the top guys now. Cody did not go through the indies, got fired because he wasn't, a big name star, went and worked the indies, fell in love with professional wrestling, actual professional wrestling. Now he's the biggest name in the industry, right? Look at a guy like Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn,
making himself on the indies.
Exactly. Look at all those guys that grinded their teeth on the indies. Like, stars are created through hardship. And through struggles even. And I don't think a lot of the guys that never struggled can truly become an all-timer. There's got to be some struggle in there. And as far as the ID program, I mean, cool. Me personally, I wouldn't pay extra for a guy.
I was going to say, how long till that kicks in? Because I dealt with it, working with Professional Wrestling Alliance. Well, my rate had to go up because I was doing those spots on, AEW Dark.
Yeah, I'm not paying extra for that.
I would even tell them, like, no. I know the AEW Dark numbers. More people look at me on YouTube each week than you. I'm not paying the extra for that. I love it.
And I'll never dog anybody for their position. I'll never, hey, you're part of the ID program. Cool. I think that's awesome. You might be the next of the next of the next of the next star. I hope you are. That does nothing for my ticket sales. I could put Joe Kickass and sell 10 tickets. If I put WWE ID Joe Kickass, I'm still selling the same tickets. So your stock did not go up. You got a cool handle. You might have people looking at you, and you might get a cool job later. But right now, you're still just Joe Kickass. That's kind of the way I look at it. And I think it's great. I think anybody, listen, if you can get a job, I don't care how you get it. If you can get a job, I don't care where it's at. If you can get a job, get a job. I'm happy for you. But I, as a person spending money, does nothing for me.
You had mentioned the guys and the girls. Just a few more topics I'll throw at you here. We'll get off here so we can get settled in and watch Raw. Coming from our home area right here in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, they are here, aren't they? Yeah, actually, me and Heather were just talking about that.
Two big nights from Cincinnati. A little shine on the real Queen City here. But you mentioned the guys and the girls, and this is a big hot topic across the board in sports, and that is equal footing. But can you talk about applying that to wrestling, men's divisions, women's divisions, especially with some of the headlines recently where we saw that on the main roster in WWE, the women, there's some disgruntled women in the locker room about airtime, about character development, and storylines like that. And I know you came from that old regime, where women were they were the novelty act on cards.
So this is. It's kind of a touchy subject, only because
you don't want to sleep on the couch tonight.
That's a good point. But, old habits are hard to break. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Those two cliches are very relevant. There are some stupendously talented women. There are some really shitty women wrestlers. Right? And you have women wrestlers right there in the middle. But to go along with that is there are some stupendously tremendous male wrestlers. There are shitty male wrestlers. And there are male wrestlers right there in the middle. Here's the thing, though. For literally a century or longer, women, little people, and at some points, ethnic people. They were a special attraction. It was a male-dominated sport for centuries. It takes more than a couple years of an evolution or revolution to change that mindset. I believe that, again, there are phenomenal women's wrestlers, but it's not just the company you have to convince that of. It is also the wrestling fans. And I know you can do, what came first, the chicken or the egg scenario here, that the fans won't think it's important until the company thinks it's important, but the company won't think it's important until the fans think it's important. It's a catch-22, and there's no right answer. But an example that you can use is after the first Saudi Arabia show where women were not allowed to be on the show, WWE created a all-female pay-per-view. I watched that pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. It was a good pay-per-view. It was thoroughly enjoyable. It was great to watch. I love seeing all the women get their flowers. I love all of them showcasing their talent. But the numbers,
I say, financially doesn't support
were
that.
Not where a more male-dominated show was. So they never ran it again. I'm not saying it was a bad show. It was not a bad show. It was a great show. But from a business standpoint, if the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, then I'm not going to squeeze another one. And they didn't. I believe that women deserve and have the right to be a part of the show. They've earned it. They deserve it. That doesn't equate to what they should get on the show, right? You can bring up the NBA and the WNBA. The NBA generates hundreds of billions with a B of dollars of revenue. The WNBA generates hundreds of millions with an M of revenue. I'm not here to say whether the WNBA is worse than the NBA. That's not my job. But what I can tell you is the numbers don't lie. I believe there's a spot for both. But you have to remember that it's been so long. Before, women got one match on the card. You know what match they got? They got semi-main event. Do you know why they got semi-main event?
No popcorn match.
You put the banger right before it. You put the women's match to calm them down, and you put the banger at the end. We're already in a generation, in a world where that women's match went from that cool down match to the banger in front or the banger in back, right? They've main evented WrestleMania. That's fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can cuss or not.
Oh yeah, we're good.
That's fucking awesome. But to say that the entire industry now has to change, that's a harder pill to swallow for the rest of the world. I don't think it's wrong. I do think they have every right to be the main focus of the show, but you have to convince the good old boy crowd of that, and that's not an easy task.
Do you think that, in a sense, the women kind of, now I wouldn't say hurt, but hold back their own cause with maybe, when I'm in the ring, you need to respect me because I'm going to go do everything the guys do. But then you go to social media, and they're selling that the sex sells there.
No, more power to them. More absolute power to them, because you know what? The guys are going to go on there and sell whatever they have to sell. The women can do the exact same thing. I have no problem with male or woman, male or female, having an OnlyFans or selling whatever they need to sell to. Again, it all comes down to putting food on the table. Mm-hmm. That's what it matters to. And nobody wants to see me with my clothes off. I promise you. But if somebody did, if there's a market for it, why wouldn't I?
I'm with you. I'm a marketing media guy, and and I know a lot of people in 2025 don't want to admit to it, but sex is still the number one seller.
I don't believe that women empowering themselves and going down that line of work is hurting them. I just think it's literally centuries of thinking of one thing can't be changed overnight. It just can't.
I mean, that's a good insight. I really haven't heard from a lot of people. We can't just flip a switch with it.
You can't, because if you flip a switch with it, it's going to turn them off even more. You know what I mean? Take Rocky Maivia as an example. Rocky Maivia was shoved down everybody's throats, which turned into Die Rocky Die, but he was a babyface, right? But once they allowed him to organically, and that's kind of the key here, organically become the biggest name in sports and entertainment, it worked. So you can't just flip a switch. Has to be organic. Women main evented WrestleMania. Like, that's huge. That's huge. Do you think people like Fabulous Moolah or Mae Young or Mildred Burke or June Byers or any of these classic pioneers ever thought they would headline the biggest show every year? Because now we got WrestleMania 2 nights. You're almost guaranteed a women's main event and a male's main event every WrestleMania, and I think that's fantastic. I wish it could be equal, but it's never going to be, and that's not a man's opinion. I'm not mansplaining it. Right. I'm just saying, like, centuries of tradition are hard to combat.
Hey, you mentioned, all those great legendary names. It'll be interesting to see, and hopefully a positive impact with the upcoming movie highlighting the women.
Queen of the Ring.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm super stoked about that. You got Tony Storm, you've got Camille, you've got all these fantastic female talents on the show. And you got a lot of local OVW people that were a part of that filming that have a lot of cameos and extra work. Jim Cornette's in it. I think that's going to be a fantastic show. If it's anything, if it's half as good as the Von Erich movie, thumbs up.
And I think that's an extra bonus with these wrestling movies. And as you said earlier, with Heels, we're getting the hyped up drama station, the Hollywood flavor added in. But as you're talking about, getting paydays for people and these cameos, which in Heels was great. Those little Easter eggs, like, hey, I know that guy. Or, I've seen him on television. I'm a big fan, and whatever the case might be. Those are those little cool hidden bonuses. But you're talking about being super stoked, and I'm super stoked to have this conversation with you. I'll let you guys to enjoy some wrestling here this evening. Again, though, can you hit us up, everybody? Let them know, man. Squared Circle Expo.
SquaredCircleX.com, Squared Circle Expo on the Facebook, the Twitter, or the X, whatever, the Instagram. Come check us out. We've got men, we've got women, we've got all the talent. So Indianapolis, Indiana, April 25th, 26th. Biggest names, pro wrestling, past, present, and future. Buy a ticket, get a shirt, tell your friends, tell your mama. Let's come have a good time. We don't sell photos and autographs. We sell memories and experiences. We just happen to be a really cool party where people happen to be selling their photos.
That is awesome, man. Brother, again, thank you for your time. For the Hamin Army out there, as a reminder, tomorrow morning, join us back here on the channel. Big Ray and Jimmy T. Jimmy, oi, from down under. They're going to be coming at you with your raw review. They like it raw. You like it raw. Could be talking all that. Check out all the programming through the week here. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe. Make sure that you're getting the alerts for all the amazing content we got going on this Friday. Locker Room. Hamin will be back in the house. Of course, he'll be back here with me next weekend on the Monday Locker Room. Again, Ed, thank you so much. We're going to let you get to 2 big nights of WWE content coming to you from Cincinnati. Looking forward to Raw tonight and tomorrow night. That NXT is loaded. I think I'm going to try to get down there for NXT tomorrow. They have stacked that card.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, man. Thank you so much. We're going to hit the end. We'll get it out.